KUAM News Headlines is presented by Calvo's Insurance, a legacy of trust, serving Micronesia since 1938. Matson, celebrating 25 years of commitment to Guam, Micronesia, and the CNMI. Cars Plus Hyundai, home of the Kona electric vehicle, an electric heart with an SUV soul. Test drive yours today at Cars Plus. McDonald's of Guam, I'm loving it, and King's Restaurant, serving your local breakfast, lunch, and dinner favorites for over 45 years.
Primetime, an executive order was signed this afternoon establishing a law enforcement officer pay scale within the Competitive Wage Act pay plan. Plus, under the U.S. Treasury final rule, Guam is authorized to use American Rescue Plan funds to build a new hospital. And an isolation and quarantine flow chart created by Public Health seems to be confusing some residents.
Hafa and good evening, everyone. I'm Hannah Devonzo, and thanks for tuning in to your news leader. Starting law enforcement officers are paid a little under $12 an hour, even though they expose themselves to dangerous situations daily. To fix this problem, an executive order was established today by the governor.
The Department of Administration conducted research regarding the government pay plan. 2014 was the last time law enforcement agencies received a pay raise. Other findings were just as troubling. Governor Leon Guerrero.
GPD was actually 18% behind the national average, ultimately resulting in our low recruitment and retention within even our local retention enforcement agencies.
According to the governor, DOA recommended that the base salaries of law enforcement agencies increase by 18%. She believes that this pay increase is doable and has plans to shift costs around to accommodate it.
The revenue streams that we are going to, of course, be looking at is our ARP funds. And of course, when we take it down to the legislature, the good senator is reviewing his revenues based on what we have gotten in terms of EITC reimbursements, and of course child tax credit, and of course our very aggressive collections and our very committed cabinet members that work very hard to decrease their expenses, and also our efforts in shifting a lot of our costs over to federal funds and federal grants.
As Guam continues to lose its law enforcement personnel, their hope is that this pay increase will recruit more officers along with maintaining the personnel they already have. The increase will go into effect on January 30th of this year.
It's official. Guam can use American Rescue Plan funding to build a new hospital. The U.S. Treasury released its final rule that includes authorization to use ARP money for construction of medical facilities. Governor Leon Guerrero, who has been touting her plan to build a new hospital complex, says she's grateful for the news.
Our concern, they supported the use of ARP monies for our hospital because it is impacted by the pandemic. It's very much related to the pandemic, and so the final rule says that.
The governor is eyeing federal land at Eagle Field as the site for medical complex, but there's growing concerns about whether the property should be returned to the original landowners. Congressman Michael San Nicolas has joined the chorus, sending Leon Guerrero a letter seeking clarification. He calls it a peculiar approach to the lease of federal lands he believes may qualify for outright return.
We signed the license for the land, and now we are going to evolve it into a lease. So we've started negotiations with the lease. I am expecting the lease to be signed by the end of the first quarter, and then we'll move forward. And the first building that we're going to break there is the public health laboratory, because we already have a complete funding for that, which is $33 million.
In a public hearing at the legislature, original landowners also voiced concerns and called for the return of the property. With COVID numbers for Guam still hitting triple digits each day, the Department of Public Health and Social Services released an isolation and quarantine flow chart for residents to follow. Daniel Perez reports on how the former PAG chairman says the chart is prompting more questions than answers.
As of January 9 of this year, residents were urged to follow a chart depicting what to do if they contract COVID-19 or are a close contact of one who has the virus. However, some residents are baffled at said chart, including the former head of the Governor's Physicians Advisory Group, Dr. Hoa Wen.
I look at it and it's kind of a hybrid on the CDC new guideline, but it's much more confusing, than I think that it's going to create a lot of confusion in the public and also confuse on the DPHS staff because it's kind of hard to understand.
Dr. Wen added that the chart released by Public Health still separates those who are vaccinated and unvaccinated, unlike the isolation and quarantine protocols released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The CDC guideline really doesn't distinguish between the different the vax and unvax, or the fully vaccinated, the boosted. It's the same for everyone. Within the close contact, the quarantine, the isolation, and if you test positive, it's all the same on the CDC guideline. Doesn't matter what is your vaccination status is, and that should be. Just because, as we know now that Omicron really, it doesn't care who you are. It doesn't know if you vax, unvax, or boosted. It affects you the same.
Dr. Wen believes that instead of having our own isolation and quarantine guidelines, we should adopt the one released by the CDC.
I think everyone should follow CDC guidelines. It creates a lot less confusion in the public, especially as we know in the past when you have a positive, there's a lot of confusion. Even you call the personnel at DPHS or at the clinic, even at the private clinic, sometimes we're giving conflict information on how many days you need to be isolated and how many days you need to be quarantined. So I think that everyone should be uniform and just use the CDC guideline. Everyone does, but if you deviate from that, you create a lot of confusion in the public.
Daniel Perez reporting for Guam's News Network.
Public Health will discuss the chart with KUAM tomorrow and are making minor changes. Nearly 30 people are at the government of Guam's COVID isolation facility at the Bayview Hotel. Guam Homeland Security Office of Civil Defense Acting Public Information Officer Jamie Franquez confirmed the number of isolating COVID cases at the facility at 29 after a briefing at the Emergency Operations Center in Agana Heights. Gov Guam has consolidated its quarantine and isolation facilities at the Bayview Hotel, but Franquez says there are currently no persons quarantining at the facility. The isolation facility is available for positive COVID cases who cannot complete isolation in their current living quarters. If GPA doesn't get an exemption from the current law that bans construction of a power plant within the nearby vicinity of a school, its entire master plan for future power generations could be in jeopardy. Nestor Lecanto has more.
It would have a devastating effect, says GPA General Manager John Beneventi, if they don't get an exemption to build a 41-megawatt diesel generator at their PD property. GPA says it's a critical backup unit for the planned 180-megawatt power plant in Ukudu that's central to the overall master plan. Beneventi made his case during a media briefing today, ahead of a public hearing on Thursday when he will try to convince senators not only of the unit's critical need, but that it will pose little threat to the health of PD residents.
But as far as the emissions, we've been living with what we had for over 60 years. That is definitely going away beginning this year, beginning July, and by the end of this year, substantially again improve.
The law to ban generators within 1,500 feet of schools was passed in 1993 following the construction of the Macheche plant next to Juan M. Guerrero Elementary in Harmon. The proposed diesel generator in PD is within that banned proximity to Jose Rios Middle School. And while the law's been on the books for almost 30 years, the issue only surfaced a few months ago. It was raised by the lenders who are financing the construction by KEPCO. Graham Bota is GPA's legal counsel.
Without a change to the law, they will not be comfortable lending money to Guam Ukudu Power to build the 41 megawatts down in the PD area. And when they brought it up, obviously we submitted the legislation to the legislature in an effort to correct the concerns raised by Lenders Council.
If the exemption is not passed by the legislature or eventually signed into law by the governor, Beneventi says there's no formal plan B right now.
If they don't want to allow us to put it there, then I guess I'll go back to the drawing board and see what happens. No, but right now, it's really, in my opinion, the best alternative and provides the most benefits to the ratepayers of Guam.
For Guam's News Network, I'm Nestor Lecanto.
Science is Fun and Awesome Learning Academy Charter School, also known as CIFA, is at risk of shutting down. That's because of an annual contract of $2.4 million with Eagle Land Holdings LLC, which is the sole provider of the facilities, equipment, utilities, services, and supplies. KUAM's Isaiah Uggan reports.
According to the latest audit financial report released by the Office of Public Accountability, Science is Fun and Awesome Learning Academy Charter School, or CIFA, ended another fiscal year in a deficit, which may cause the school to shut down. The OPA reports that CIFA ended fiscal year 2021 in a deficit net position of $1.4 million. That's an improvement from the fiscal year 2020 deficit of $2.6 million, according to Ernst & Young LLP, who conducted the audit for the OPA. Although the deficit of the fiscal year is better from the prior year, Ernst & Young emphasized that because of the Partnership for Learning Support and Education through Lease Utilities, Supplies, and Services, or PLEASE contract, CIFA's operations will be affected. That's the 5-year contract with Eagle Land Holdings LLC, which expires in June of next year. However, Ernst & Young noted there were no deficiencies in the internal controls and compliance with certain provisions of laws, regulations, contracts, and grant agreements in 2 management letter comments. In addition to paying for the PLEASE contract, CIFA periodically receives cash advances from Eagle. In fiscal year 2021, Eagle advanced $98,000 for medical insurance. CIFA records the cash advances as payment due to the contractor. Meanwhile, the OPA report also indicated that CIFA's total revenues increased while total expenses decreased. CIFA's total revenues of $3.9 million about doubled compared to fiscal year 2020. Gov Guam appropriation made up 80% of the total revenues at $3.1 million, while the Education Stabilization Fund, or ESF, grant of $219,000 contributed 6%. CIFA counted the $544,000 discount from the PLEASE contract as another income, which contributed 14% to the total revenues. Gov Guam appropriated $2 million or $6,000 per enrollee in fiscal year 2021 for 325 students. However, with 346 enrollees in school year 2020 to 2021, CIFA received an additional $150 per pupil. CIFA's fiscal year 2021 total expenses decreased by $575,000, or 18% from $3.3 million in fiscal year 2020 to $2.7 million. Despite CIFA's total revenues being enough to cover expenses in fiscal year 2021, its financial obligation under the PLEASE contract remains larger than its cash inflows, causing its net position to stay in a deficit, which questions CIFA's ability to continue operating. Public Law 35-39 authorized CIFA to use unexpended funds to pay prior year obligations. The charter school requested an additional $1.1 million to pay the remaining obligations under the PLEASE contract. Although Gov Guam approved prior fiscal year appropriations to cover past obligations, the annual payment alone to the contractor is expensive. CIFA plans to renegotiate the PLEASE contract, request to forgive past debts, and seek additional funding from the legislature, grants, and local businesses to provide sufficient cash flows for operations. Reporting for Guam's News Network, Guahusi Isaiah Uggan.
The students involved in the riot that broke out at Southern High School last Friday may be getting expelled. That's according to Guam Department of Education Interim Public Information Officer Michelle Franquez, who confirmed exclusively with KUAM News that expulsion discussions are underway.
When you're considering a disciplinary action as part of the due process for our students, yes. So in the case of someone being considered for expulsion or a student being considered for expulsion, a disciplinary action committee meeting must take place where the student where the incident is reviewed, and through the committee is determined whether or not the student will just continue their suspension, or will expulsion be the final say or determination.
Meanwhile, following the fighting incident that occurred on school grounds in Santa Rita, Sumaya, at the home of the Dolphins last Friday, a modified lockdown was initiated Monday, Tuesday morning to conduct a school-wide search.
Conducted what they call a blanket search. Because of the riot last week and just in an abundance of caution, they wanted to ensure that student safety was the utmost priority today as they returned from the 3-day weekend. And so what they did is from when they got off the bus, they broke into teams, the school admin, along with Guam Police Department, just there for support. They broke into search groups and the students they complied with the faculty and staff as they did a search and just looking for anything that may result in any bodily harm or whatnot. But overall, it proved to be a very smooth and successful blanket search. It started around 6:21 this morning, and it ended and concluded by 9:45 of this morning. From that point on, school resumed for their instructional day.
No updates were available on the student transported to the hospital as a result of the riot. Once again, we invite you to voice your view across our social media pages with our daily question. Today we ask, what are your thoughts on the public health guidance regarding quarantine and isolation? We'll share responses on the link. Stick around for more news here on Primetime. You're watching KUAM.
Don't need a work break, keep the smile on your face. The moments you can't replace, and I'll be around. Whoa, you can count on me. You can count on me for life.
Wherever life takes you, we're always here for you. Calvo's Insurance. Count on us for life.
Half a day. As we look ahead to a brighter tomorrow, Matson's commitment to Guam and Micronesia remains stronger than ever. While the world around us is ever changing, what remains unchanged is our commitment to you, our customers, and the island communities we serve. Shipping is what we do best, and serving our community is at the heart of everything we do. But we don't do it alone. This is why we support organizations that make caring for the people and the environment a top priority. We know that many count on Matson's lifeline services in the Pacific. And that's why we continue to work hard to ensure that our shipments remain on time all the time. Matson recently added another Aloha-class vessel to our schedule. We now have 2 of Matson's largest and fastest ships serving Guam from the U.S. West Coast and Hawaii. With our new state-of-the-art vessels, we stand ready to support the region's economic recovery. Thank you for the privilege of serving you for the last 25 years. And you can count on Matson to be here for the next 25 years and beyond.
Let us know what's up on our KUAM News WhatsApp tip line at 671-727-0094. Share information about what's happening in your town, on Guam or the Tsunami, and what you want us to know. Reach us on WhatsApp at 671-727-0094.
A global effort is underway to help the South Pacific nation of Tonga after a massive volcanic eruption hit the region this weekend. The underway explosion triggered a tsunami alert for the West Coast. CBS's Ian Lee has the latest from London.
Smoke from a devastating eruption shrouds the South Pacific in darkness and uncertainty. The explosion cut off communications from the nearby island nation of Tonga, making it difficult to know how many people were affected. Australia and New Zealand launched surveillance flights Monday to assess the damage.
This is subject to weather conditions and most particularly issues around the ash cloud.
Satellites captured the initial eruption, which sent a shockwave across the Pacific, felt as far away as Alaska. The boom from the blast was heard more than 1,100 miles away in New Zealand.
That is a force of nature that is incredible.
Grant Alexander lost his boat when tsunami waves crashed on shore.
They heard the noise and people were running down the piers, banging on their boats, telling them to get out.
The eruption triggered a tsunami that flooded Pacific coastlines from Japan to the U.S. Large waves hit parts of California as authorities issued and eventually lifted a tsunami alert for the West Coast. Ian Lee, CBS News.
Back here on Guam, National Weather Service meteorologist Landon Idolette says the region continues to focus on the South Pacific in the shadow of the undersea volcanic eruption near Tonga. He says the recent weather we've seen is not related to the eruption. However, he says a tsunami pulse came through the region.
Unfortunately, that ash plume, we're not expecting that to come anywhere near us, and we are some 3,600 miles apart. But we did set a signature of a very small signature of a tsunami passing through the buoys. The top gauge up there is Saipan. They had the little squiggy lines in that black trace. That's that tsunami pulse going through the tide gauge there. It probably translates to just a few inches at both Guam and the Saipan gauges.
Idolette says it's an indication that we are not tsunami-proof, but we can be tsunami-ready when a significant threat arrives. They continue to monitor threats 24/7. Guam is highly vulnerable to food shortages. At least 90% of the island's produce are imported, but there are ways to decrease that number. Tyler Matanani has our next story.
It's been years since we've been in the pandemic. Bare shelves in grocery stores and many restaurants unable to sell certain products due to shipping delays are showing the grim reality of our world today. But just because Guam is a small island in the Pacific doesn't necessarily mean we're stranded.
We've had a lot of people interested in hydroponics as a way to make their own food at the house.
Back to Nature is watering the confidence of new gardeners. India Sekiguchi, owner of the Tamuning store, explains the different methods for at-home farming.
We sell a couple different types of hydroponic systems. The most popular that we found is called the NFT system, which is made out of PVC piping. They're long pipes that are parallel to the ground, like a horizontal system.
And in those, you can grow successfully leafy green vegetables, ones that have simple root systems such as lettuce, kale, spinach, and bok choy. The best part is, you don't even need a large farming space.
You can actually just put these NFT systems on your balcony. All you need to have is some good sun exposure.
Now, as far as a water source, it's quite simple.
You need a reservoir of water, and then the tubes go down into the reservoir where your submersible water pump is. And then that's just going to basically be recycling the water through the system, feeding the plants. You need some nutrients, which of course we supply here too. You can go organic as far as the nutrients are concerned, so that there's no kind of, fear of what you're putting into your body.
And before you know it, you're making your own stir fries at home with your own vegetables that you grew, and salads for days. There's also vertical farming and indoor farming, which allows people to have more control over plant environment.
And that's basically involving the use of sometimes a room in your house, but a lot of people will purchase like an indoor grow tent, and then they'll deck it out with lighting and exhaust systems. And in those kind of more controlled environments, you're really not that limited. You can grow whatever you would like to.
It can be quite daunting if you don't know where to start, but Sekiguchi says it's a gradual learning process that their staff is prepared to walk everyone through.
So you can walk in the door and say, "Hi, I'd like to start a garden, but I don't know anything about it. Help me." We'll talk about, your specific situation. Where do you live? What are you able? What type of time are you able to commit to it?
They've seen a popular rise in farming, particularly amongst the younger generation, giving sprouts of hope for a more sustainable Guam. For Guam's News Network, I'm Tyler Matanani.
Route 28 in Dededo, better known as Sang Song Road, will be improved this year, and to officially get it underway, a groundbreaking ceremony was held. Department of Public Works Director Vincent Areola.
We did have the COVID go through the island. We used all that time to do all our planning and our design for a lot of our major road projects, and this is one of them. We're very pleased to be here in Dededo. This is going to be a full reconstruction. We'll take it to a full 3 lanes. We're going to do sidewalks. We're going to take care of a lot of the storm drains and things of that nature, and you'll see it. It's going to be a really beautiful thing.
Improvements to Sang Song Road include repaving the existed and distressed or failed asphalt, new road signages, as well as reconstruction of sidewalk ramps to better serve residents with disabilities.
Administration is bringing in new roads. It's going to upgrade the values of your homes and your houses.
Areola added that DPW will also be working to improve the roads around each village and ask residents not to leave abandoned and junk cars on the side of the street once the projects are complete and to keep them clean. Stay with us. Coming up next on KUAM News, Sports with Dave Delgado.
Beautiful. It is, right, baby?
Dad, isn't that where we usually stop for gas?
It's where we used to stop, but not anymore.
But isn't that the place with the milkshakes?
Okay, all right, let's go.
Good job, kids.
Take your adventure further in the first ever Santa Fe Hybrid.
Guam is truly a majestic place with its sheer natural beauty, wealth of beaches, and culturally rich landscape. Unfortunately, Guam has a real problem with unwanted invasive species. Help us in preventing their introduction and spread. The coconut rhinoceros beetle, the little fire ant, the African snail, Siam weed. These are just a few of the numerous invasives on Guam. Follow proper custom procedures when bringing plants and animals into Guam.
Help protect Guam. Tell your family and friends about invasive species.
To report invasive species, call 475-PEST.
KUAM Sports is brought to you by Docomo Pacific. Better together.
The Guam Football Association's open training sessions are being held at the GFA's National Training Center for players U14 to U20 age levels. Sakiko Ogura, head of women's football, spoke to the players before they started their workouts. Ogura said, "We want to identify players in Guam who love to play football and have a desire to develop into elite players to compete at the international level."
The open house training provides the opportunity for players to showcase their abilities and is for them to see where their skill level is among their peers. For coaches, a week-long event like this really allows for them to see the abilities of all players interested.
Open training sessions for the U14 and U17 age groups will continue on the 19th and 21st from 5:30 to 7 p.m. For the U20 age group and the women's national team, open training sessions will be held from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. on these same dates.
The goal for this event is to identify players, to create a training pool to develop consistently to represent Guam in future international competitions. We are looking to implement a better structure for continuous development and sustainability. This is the first step in our overall goal to change women's football in Guam.
All 4 age groups will have one final open training sessions January 22nd from 9 in the morning to 11 a.m. The eligible player birth years for each group are U14, 2010 to 2012, U17, 2007 to 2009, U20, 2004 to 2005, and the women's are from 2003 and older.
KUAM Sports is brought to you by Docomo Pacific. Better together.
Building on the past, we at Docomo Pacific Business believe in helping businesses move forward and together, changing the way we get things done to make you and your company reach your highest potential. Trust in our commitment to bring you the best solutions for all your business goals. We are Docomo Pacific Business. Let's work better together.
Taco Bell is so good and so cheap.
I know, right? I wonder why.
What if they know we're broke? What if they're trying to be the good guys?
Ah. Thanks, Taco Bell!
Say hello to the first Hawaiian Bank mobile app. Got a question about your finances? You've come to the right place. Bring all your accounts together. even those that aren't with us, and see the big picture, right down to the smallest detail. Unlock powerful tools like Insights and Money Map that help you save time and take control of your finances. When you connect accounts with the First Hawaiian Bank mobile app, it all starts with yes.
Welcome back. Giving Every Tuesday highlights individuals, businesses, and organizations who are giving back and spreading kindness with simple gestures. We head over to Jigo and paid a visit to Guam Adult Dementia Care Center, where they got much needed help from a handful of first responders.
Tucked away in a quiet corner of Jigo is Guam, an adult dementia daycare center. Open since 2005, the center caters to Manumku 60 years and older who are afflicted with dementia. Evelyn Cruz, the customer service supervisor for the center, says they have about 35 clients, but due to the pandemic, the numbers have been lower. Also, as a result of the pandemic, much of the landscaping at the center has been put on the back burner, especially the ponding basin near the front of the entrance, which was quite an eyesore.
This is overgrown, it's above the fence already. And then when you look, of course, it looks like a jungle. It's not supposed to be a jungle. It's supposed to be like a basin with nothing on it, but you know, since the pandemic, everything is overgrown.
Responding to her plea for assistance were a handful of firefighters with the Guam Fire Department who showed up one day last week right after their shift ended. Firefighter John Anthony Munoz spearheaded the project, who said it all started with a simple WhatsApp message to some of his cycle mates.
There's probably about 7 of us. 7 of us off-duty firefighters. We had some guys bring some chainsaws and some machetes. We cut down a few trees. Not really in search of the recognition. You know, we're just doing it to help contribute back to our community. We think that that this is our island and we should definitely give back.
Munya adds that they will be back to finish what they started. As a way of saying thank you for their efforts, Cruz and her staff prepared pancit and pandesal.
I am just so thankful with the energy, the motivation from these guys coming from work to come here and clean it. And it took them, I think, almost, until 12 noon just to finish the work.
If you would like to make a donation of hand sanitizers, masks, or wipes to the center, or would like to know more information, you can call 671-922-1818 or 671-685-1925.
And before we close out the news tonight, our latest round of birthday shoutouts from the Cold Stone Creamery Birthday Club.
Happy birthday on this January 18th to Kitty McDonald. Happy birthday blessings to our kitty cat. Wishing her a lifetime of blessings and good health. We love you, says your family, who says again, because you can never say it too many times, we love you, kitty. And belated birthday wishes going out today to Maya Augustine, who was born yesterday on the 17th. Maya celebrates birthday number 10 in 2022. We love you, say Mom, Dad, Anthony, Grandma, and Grandpa. Everybody out there. Also born on January 17th and celebrating a birthday, Joseph Duenas Jr., who celebrates birthday number big 1 of 5. Happy birthday, Joseph Jr. Enjoy your special day, say Mom, Dad, and your brothers and sisters. Again born on the 17th was Violetta Beethoven's. Happy birthday, Mom and Grandma, with more blessings and lots of love. Thank you for everything, say your families. And lastly, but certainly not leastly, celebrating birthday number 48, Clarissa Roy. Happy birthday to my beautiful wife, Clarissa, who was born on the 16th. Love always, your husband, Terrence.
That's going to do it for us here on Primetime. I'm Hannah Devonzo. Thanks for watching and good night.
Hello and